Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for an informative ProShip webinar featuring our friends at Manhattan Associates and Bricks. My name is Jerry Dixon, Head of Partnerships here over at ProShip, with 20 plus years in the industry, and I'll be your host for this enlightening webinar. A couple of housekeeping items. If you have a question, on the right, you will see a place to submit questions, and if you cannot see it, feel free to click the question icon near the bottom of your screen. While we wait for everyone to join us, I am going to ask a poll question to Adam and Tyler and Justin before I introduce them, just to bide the time. So I'm going to throw one at you, gentlemen. One of the questions we received in waiting for this to begin was, what are the range of your volumes and how much do they increase during peak season? I'm assuming they're asking volumes of the customers that you work with. Does anybody want to take that?
Yeah, I don't mind giving it a start. So hey everyone, Adam Klein with Manhattan. We see a pretty wide range in terms of increase of shipping volumes during peak. I would say on average, maybe we'll see customers double, triple volume and so forth. That's pretty commonplace. But look, I've seen, pretty often we get to 5x and 10x volumes for certain businesses, which is, you think about that, like 10 times your normal daily volume coming through during peak. And we've even seen customers up to 20x volumes in the past.
I'll echo Adam. I'll echo Adam there and say, double and triple is pretty normal these days, it seems. And getting in a warehouse where it's that 10 plus, 10x plus, 20x is definitely fun and exciting. I think what's interesting is I've seen over the past couple of years is extending some of these pre-Black Friday sales and pre-peak sales. It's helped smoothed it out so that, maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday is not as big of a 20x day, and maybe we just get a whole week of 3, 4, 5x days.
Yeah, and as we think about this going forward, this is almost foreshadowing, because later in the broadcast, we will talk about how you simulate those 2, 3, or 10x days.
Here's a good one. Are there carriers that you onboard only for peak season?
That's a tough one.
Rationalization.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because remember, you have to, and this is just talking from the shipping software side, you have to have everything in place, all the accounts commission, the EDI double checked, and you also have to have the physical requirements in that warehouse set up before that. And I don't know how many carriers are willing just to be a 3-month carrier. So I'm sure there are companies that do it, but it seems like a lot of effort for just a 3-month of utilization.
Sure. Now, one thing that I think that you would agree with, Justin, is, we have seen over the course of the past, 5, 6 years, a pretty marked shift from maybe the big three, talking US, right? From the big three, where it was like, man, if 90+% of my volume go with, one of those or maybe a collection of those, to offloading some portion of the volume to some of the regionals and maybe some others. So carrier diversification, just in general, is clearly a trend. We're seeing a ton of that, where you go from having maybe almost exclusively a single carrier to having 5, 6, 7 carriers in your portfolio and in your toolbox, so to speak. But I agree with you. Doing it just for a short period of time seems like an awful lot of setup and work, to get there. But yeah, look, I'm sure somebody's done it before.
Adam, yeah. I got to jump in with that, to the statistics. You're right. Pre-pandemic, we saw averages of 4, 4.5. Now, post-pandemic, our enterprise customers are averaging, that's creeping up towards 6 and starting to look like it might get above 6 pretty soon. So you're seeing that, especially with your greater than 10,000 shipments a day customers, they do have a lot of diversification and rationalization. Tyler, sorry I cut you off there.
No, you're good. I think we've seen people add new carriers leading up to peak with the intention of, I need more volume. Maybe one of my traditional tier 3 gave me a cap. But I agree with you, Justin, that enabling it just for peak period and then saying, all right, we're going to turn it back off in January is probably not a good use of time. I think we're going to talk about in a little bit here that there's probably better uses of time to be able to prepare and then look strategically, what carrier do I evaluate? Is it for a specific channel? Is it for a specific region? Be a little more strategic than just, give me another 5,000 packages that I could ship each day.
All right. Well, thanks for spending time with me talking a little bit about supply chain and logistics before we get started. Again, everybody, welcome. This is a very informative ProShip webinar with Manhattan Associates and Bricks. Housekeeping items, if you would like to ask a question, please look to the right. If you can't see the place to ask a question, click the question icon near the bottom of the screen. Now, as we navigate through the complexities of supply chain and logistics, understanding the synergies between state-of-the-art technologies is crucial. So today, with these 3 experts, they are from leading global supply chain technology companies. They're going to share their insights and answer your questions. We'll explore the collaborative strengths and their top 4 secrets for being a successful high-volume shipper. We're also going to talk about building a winning ESS and then offer some final advice. So let's not delay. Adam, Tyler, and Justin, please introduce yourselves and share a little bit about what you do.
Sure. I'll go first. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Justin Kramer. I'm one of the technical co-founders of ProShip. In the process of doing all this, I've had the privilege of being able to design, develop, deploy, and configure systems sometimes that ship more than 3 million packages a day, other systems that have crossed 4 continents. I've been in the IT side of small parcel shipment execution since 2001.
Great. Thanks, Justin. So my name is Adam Klein, Senior Director of Product Management here at Manhattan. I look after the strategy of our warehouse management solution. I've really only ever done warehouse management solutions. I started in R&D and been in the product management organization now for a number of years, with the company for 27 plus years now. And really love talking about all things warehousing, shipping, etc.
Thanks, Adam. And I'm Tyler Linderman. I'm VP of Strategy and Growth here at Bricks and responsible for how we partner with great companies and provide solutions to great customers over the years. So I have been implementing the systems that Justin and Adam have been building for the better part of the past 15 years. And so really excited to talk about how you can strategically integrate these together and build a unified enterprise supply chain stack.
Thank you very much. Again, we're going to talk about the power of a unified ESS and those top secrets that y'all have for us. So we're going to start with the power of a unified enterprise software stack. Justin, can you explain a little bit more in detail what is an ESS?
Yeah, so ESS, that's your enterprise software stack. And as I was preparing this morning for this, I actually thought about the comparing and contrasting here. Each part of the enterprise software stack, it has its own unique purpose. Usually we want to look at an ERP first, right? You need some place for all your finance to occur. If you're a manufacturer, you need to keep track of materials and productivity and things of that nature. That's usually where your ERP comes in. Your WMS, this is what drives everything in the warehouse, inventory control, all these other things, really important for all of those things there. And your OMS, well, that extends even more capabilities. Often OMSs are used in your stores to execute shipments, and everybody else will go deeper into these. I'm just really lightly touching them. But when it comes to shipment execution, all of these systems often will rely upon a multi-carrier shipping software because of the sheer number of changes associated with this. And like I said, I was thinking about it this morning, and I'm like, when we look at Wikipedia and we look at IMDb, so if you're looking up to see, 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, so to speak, right? Well, if you go into IMDb, it's gonna be a lot easier to go from movie star to TV star, et cetera, et cetera. But if you want general information, if you want bigger picture information, you need to go into Wikipedia. Okay. And so as we think about the differences between those two pieces of software that we may use in our day-to-day just searching information, we also have to think about that inside our enterprise as well, and how these 4 different pieces of software combined with several dozen other pieces of software, because marketing is going to have their own, manufacturing may have their own, so on and so forth. These pieces of software really come together to give you that journey from cart to customer.
Yeah, if we dive in a little bit deeper here, I'll start with ERP, and like you were kind of starting with, Justin, there, it's really the backbone and foundation of this enterprise software stack. And frankly, many companies, as they start and grow, they use it as a de facto OMS and WMS and parcel shipping engine as well. I mean, we've replaced that functionality with best of breed solutions like Manhattan Associates and ProShip many times. But regardless, it's still that key system that's the kind of the foundation for your financial management, right? I know Adam will say we don't really want to keep product cost and margins inside the WMS. It's your product catalog. It can function as a sales and marketing hub as well as a CRM. And really the idea is that it's built to receive in data from external sources, whether it's the web or a vendor or a field sales rep, automatically process that, make decisions, and send it out to other systems, whether it's the WMS, the OMS, or your multi-carrier system to really drive processes. So in sum, it's the hub of where all that data originates from and eventually goes back to in some form or fashion.
Yeah, that's all good points. I'll just kind of add on to that a little bit. I mean, OMS is pretty close proximity to the to the ERP, and oftentimes you can think of it almost like as an orchestration layer in terms of where do you fulfill your orders from, and then WMS is really an execution piece of that. But the interesting piece of it is that you can see some synergy there in terms of the alignment with the multi-carrier shipping software, because in WMS, clearly shipping from DCs to the to the end customer, but also inside OMS. Oftentimes in OMS, certainly ours does, has the ability to have kind of other applications in really close proximity, such as applications that run ship from store. And so when you start shipping from store and you're expanding your network from a supply chain perspective, you really get some nice power there. And certainly, Manhattan has a point of view around how these things work together, OMS and WMS, in a more unified manner. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on.
And I'd love to take that concept of the unified manner, because it's really important, because each of these systems that we just talked about, they have their particular concerns. They are systems of record for very specific things. And being able to get that data moved across from one specialized component to another specialized component with the least amount of friction possible gives you the greatest flexibility. So Tyler mentioned some of the information that might be in an ERP. If you are doing international shipping, origin of manufacturing, if it's dangerous goods, we may need various other pieces of information necessary to automate the execution of that shipping. Why type data twice? Somebody has typed that information into the ERP. Let's send it down so that it can actually be executed properly. So in the warehouse, WMS can warn the operators to ensure that they're not, they know what they're handling, so on and so forth. And if you need to put MSDN sheets or whatever they're called nowadays in there, those things can all happen. And none of this can happen without great unification between those products in the enterprise software stack.
You have to also automate the collection of data, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, automate not just the collection, but the movement of data. So that really is a good thing. Like I said, if we can type that data once or never, because we're actually pulling it in from another system, that's even better.
Okay. Well, now that we went over the core components, what are the benefits of a unified ESS?
It really is about. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Justin, you briefly mentioned it there. I want to bring up that you used the word unified a couple times, and I know it's one of Adam's favorite words right now, and it's kind of what we want to talk about. There's a key difference which we want to hammer home here. Is like there's a difference between unified and just integrated, right? So when I think of integrated, it's okay, we'll send an order from the ERP to the WMS, or and then we'll separately send it to the OMS. But when we say unified and the unification of these systems, it's another level of working together and that orchestration. I know we've got a good example of a customer that runs the Manhattan Active Omni platform, and the fact that they have the point of sale system and Manhattan Active Omni, they've been able to turn on Omni Cart functionality where you can, start an order on the web and then finish it in the store, right? And so that's the level of, interconnectedness that we talk about when we say unified, is looking at this whole software stack from a holistic version and not just, okay, what is best in my WMS? What is best in my OMS? And okay, well, technically they need the shipping costs. We'll just send it back up so it gets placed in the field somewhere. When we talk about unified in your software stack, it's saying, and we'll dive into this into one of the secrets, is how do I look at ERP and OMS and multi-carrier together and strategically make decisions of, let's send product through the OMS to these stores because I know that I can fulfill it from the store with the right margins, and I know I can get it quicker because it's closer to the customer. So I think looking at it from that unified level, like it's a different, level of strategic optimization that can happen when you're looking at a unified stack versus just integrated.
Yeah, technically, if you're still using a flat file, you're integrated, but you're not unified. And unfortunately, I've been working on customers this week that still have flat file communication between some of these components that we're talking about. Yeah, but Tyler, you're right on that by unifying, it does extend us to be able to do things like ship from store, BOPUS, alternate delivery locations, which that information may be coming from one part of the stack and needs to go all the way up into the e-commerce suite, so we can push that to the customer at the time of ordering. So if they know they're not going to be home that day, they can push that thing to a pickup spot, push that delivery to a pickup spot, and not worry about porch piracy, which has been on the rise a little bit lately. But as we open up these data flows, as you said, we open up opportunities.
Justin, is it important to understand the difference between steady state and peak?
Of course, right? It's one thing there are different stressors, right? In peak, all of a sudden, everything is stressed hard. In steady state versus peak, steady state is going to have different stressors on it. It may be more operational stress. Can your people actually sustain that level of work for that amount of time? Have you pulled back too many people from your operations? But if we're talking about the enterprise software stack, as we think about steady state, things should work fine if they work at peak, but not vice versa. Okay. And I think that's where, as we move into some of these secrets that we're going to talk about, that's where we'll talk about some of the testing options that are available, so that you're not just sitting there at steady state and afraid of what might happen at peak.
Okay. Speaking of the secrets, I've worked with Manhattan Associates on and off since 2004. I know what they can do and how successful they are at making shippers successful. And Adam, please give us a quick highlight of what Manhattan Associates does and kick off the top 4 secrets and share what secret number 1 is, would you?
Yeah, sure. So, here at Manhattan, we're really busy solving, problems around supply chain, omni-channel fulfillment, supply chain planning, and so forth. And a lot of folks kind of know us as sort of warehouse management, but we are way more than that. Warehouse management, transportation management, omni-channel, as I mentioned, supply chain planning as well. And so if it's a supply chain problem that needs to be solved, we're probably pretty well equipped to do so. And to that end, maybe I'll kind of dive into that first secret, which is really, how do you streamline the order management side and the fulfillment side? So fulfillment, number one, I want to this is coming from a WMS guy, but fulfillment can happen from multiple places, not just the distribution center. In fact, we think of fulfillment across the entire network, which is inclusive of all the stores and so forth. And so we were talking about the ESS and the proximity of the WMS and the OMS. The only way to really open up your aperture, to see the entire kind of all the nodes of supply chain, is through that OMS. And then you've got to be able to to execute off of the plan. So Justin mentioned buy online, pick up in store, buy online, ship from store. I mean, there's all these kind of new to some extent not that new now, I suppose. It's become pretty well ingrained in all of our lives, I think, at this point. Methods of getting product to the end customer. But the key there is that you've got a decision-making layer, which is the OMS, to determine what's the best way to move inventory, from the shipper to your hands as the end customer, right? That's really the bottom line of what it's trying to do. It can do a lot of other stuff, and it's way more sophisticated than that. But if I boil it down, that's what it's trying to do. So what happens though when omni-channel, specifically order management, kind of intersects with WMS in this kind of new world? Number one, it's not just proximity, but like if these two things can live and breathe and coexist on the same architecture, same cloud architecture, very specifically, you start to get to a much higher pace of innovation. We get to start really looking at stores and DCs all together as part of that single network. We can look at things like rate shopping, for optimal carrier service selection across the network, but also look at where, how can we get into some margin protection and some other kind of business needs as well. OMS can do that. Then at the end of the day, the WMS, it just keeps doing what it's supposed to do, which is I'm just going to go ship a bunch of product, right? But the OMS is really the brains behind that and making the decisions of where and when do I ship. So we might want to start to get closer to the customer, in which case lighting up nodes in your store network can really help with that. And we start thinking about Amazon and all these really like handy tools they have around same day, next day, and so forth. We see a ton of brands that are able to compete with that because of all the stores they've got that are in close proximity to the end customer. So that becomes a huge value add just from a network perspective. So now that OMS and WMS can collaborate on a much more granular level, again, going back to some of the terminologies that we're using around unification versus integration, and in our case, Justin, no, we're not communicating between OMS and WMS with flat files. Everything's API first, so everything is real time, modernized, and what that means is we can start to unlock really interesting, talk about brand new, bleeding edge flows like customer control fulfillment, where a customer, places an order, maybe a few minutes later, maybe they have a little bit of buyer's regret. Maybe we want to cancel the order. In the old world, that order is going to ship and it's going to show up at their door, and then it's going to go right back via return, which think about all the cost savings that you can enjoy by allowing your customer to kind of manage the fulfillment lifecycle a little bit farther along, right? So the OMS can now look into the WMS, they can look into the distribution center and make those changes much later in the game, really all the way until it's been loaded on a truck. I mean, that's kind of the point of no return now, where it used to be as soon as the order was dropped to the DC, can't touch it. Or at the very latest, maybe once I've allocated or run the wave or something, that was about as far as you could go. Now I can push that envelope way further down and ultimately enjoy some really nice cost savings, fewer returns. Look, it's better for the planet, right? I mean, there's less shipments, less returns. It's all good stuff. Then you add to that, the velocity of updates and innovation that we can drive with, and I don't want to turn this into a commercial or anything, but you start thinking about cloud native software, the pace of change really increases. And you're going to hear that from me probably a bit throughout this session is, this pace of change and the ability to go and make adjustments much more rapidly than in the old world. That really changes the game. So you've got the WMS and the OMS able to affect change very, very rapidly. You've got, companies like ProShip who are able to also make change very rapidly to keep up with carrier changes and market demands and so forth. And it's a pretty winning formula, especially when you think about prepping for peak season, where you have those huge volume fluctuations that we talked about earlier. So now we start to think about, not just how do these systems work together, but like, okay, well, how do I bring in more automation? How do I deal with challenges around keeping and retaining warehouse talent. That's been a challenge for the past 4 or 5 years. I can automate some workflows and drive more MHE into the warehouse with open architectures, APIs, and so forth. So there's a lot of new things that are happening inside the DC as well that really all help with kind of that volume increase. And so all these things have always been kind of what I'd say important. Partial shipping flexibility, automation, taking care of your people, employee engagement, et cetera. But I'd say all those things have shifted to becoming pretty critical once you start thinking about peak season and being able to deal with all this. Yeah.
Justin, ProShip's pretty flexible at connecting not only to Active, but also to WMI, WMOS, and Scale.
We are, and when we look at as we move on to Secret 2 here, I think it's really important to start thinking about how this connectivity happens and how it's different and what options are available. And there are some reasons why we might want to do real time, some reasons in some cases why we might want to do batch. So I think that the batch is slowly getting smaller and smaller for financial reasons. Back in the day, we used to do a lot of wave shipping, a lot of producing that label, what we refer to as front of line. Okay, so when we produced that label, we produced it before we ever had hands on the goods. Okay, whereas now what we're seeing that shift to end of line. Maybe it's full automation with a Panda, print and apply, if you will. Maybe it's not as far forward. It's in the pack station, but still with both of those, whether it's a pack station or a Panda, we know that when we get that label put on the box, it is a matter of minutes, if not seconds, before that's actually in a trailer or in a Gaylord, ready to be moved and custody exchanged to the carrier. Now, the reason this is important, and I think Adam alluded to it quite well, right, is the fact that the further down we put that label, the more predictability we have to choose to push things back up the chain, right? We can more predictably say, okay, because I know this is going to make it on today's trailer, I can use trailers up until maybe 5 minutes before they're actually going to pull. I can actually keep track of each trailer that is available to me and when they pull. And I can now continue to leverage the trailers that are still there for maybe ground or postal last mile services that is going to get there a day sooner in order to reduce my overall logistics costs while still maintaining a customer expectation. Okay. As we push this forward the way we used to do it back in the day in the Wave solution, we're not positive that those labels are going to be applied to the boxes and the boxes are going to be in the trailer for the custody exchange to the carrier. So this is one of those things that you have to think about. Where am I producing my labels? What are my advantages and disadvantages to that? Because the further down I go, the more control I give back to the customer to change, to upgrade, to downgrade, to cancel that order. The happier that customer is because they're able to have that control, the more likely they are to return to us and order more. The less likely we're going to have to pay for return shipping or even go through the process of determining if we're going to have them just trash it when we replace it or have them send it back to us. All of these things, they all affect so many other things as we look downstream. So the more control we have, the closer we can get to putting the label on as it gets to the trailer, the more likely we're going to have control upstream to make our customers happy.
Yeah, I think jumping in there, Justin, another piece of this is like having the data in each of those systems that we talked about and having the right data gives you the option to strategically decide where do we want these decisions to be made, right? I think back to a luxury goods retailer here in the U.S. we were helping last year prepare for peak. And we had a situation to where in certain cases and certain channels, we wanted to lock in the ship via and the label as soon as the order was placed, right? Versus we had other scenarios and other channels to where it was, let's wait until the Panda at the very end of the line, right? In that case where it's a lower cost good or it's one that's more easily replaceable, let's wait as long as possible and choose the most optimal carrier, whether that's optimizing for service time or optimizing for cost, whatever it might be. However, if you call a special VIP line and you order a $3,000 necklace, we want to reserve that with one of our one of our highly insured special carriers right away, right? We don't want to take the chance that it gets filled up, or, we're not shipping that with one of our traditional 3 carriers. But the ability to take a step back and think strategically on, okay, where is the best place for this decision to be made for this channel, for this type of good, for this region, that having the data available to strategically run some scenarios and make those decisions, it opens up a whole nother world of, okay, now what can I optimize? I have so many options. Maybe today I want to optimize for labor costs. Maybe tomorrow I want to optimize for parcel transportation cost. Maybe I want to optimize to make sure we reduce returns. It opens up a whole nother world that we can start doing just by having that unified piece of data and having the right systems that are able to really drive and take a holistic supply chain approach versus a warehouse only or e-com only approach at that point.
Love that compare and contrast. It's awesome.
Yeah, and Tyler, if I could, so just a couple of comments there. I think you're spot on, by the way. Having kind of that full view of all the orders makes a ton of sense. And one of the things that I think about a lot, and when it comes to data-driven decision making, is that concept going back to what Justin said too. It's batch versus real time. If you think about kind of the nuts and bolts of inside the warehouse order fulfillment, we've been very reliant for decades on the wave planner to be number one, probably the smartest person in the building, right? Usually, yep. Probably one of the better paid people in the building. But think about the onus that's put on that particular individual to get everything right from a order selection perspective, order prioritization perspective, being able to kind of sort out the nuances of that $3,000 necklace versus maybe a little lower end pair of earrings that aren't quite as highly kind of sensitive. How does that one person possibly keep all that straight? And the answer is they realistically can't. They do a really, really good job of it, but at the end of the day, there's going to be suboptimality there. So then the question becomes, how does software come in and fill in the gap there and start to make decisions on when do I release work? Where do I release that work based on capacity of either automation or the labor force, and are there value-added services that need to be done on certain items and some engraving or some personalization, whatever the case may be. But how can you do all that without the access to real-time data and some level of automation and intelligence? And then at the end of the day, driving that towards true optimization, where you're gonna basically juggle competing priorities: on-time shipping, customer satisfaction versus picking density, efficiency, productivity. Those two things are at odds, and so it's going to be very difficult for a person based on tribal knowledge, and this is kind of how we've done things, to get that right all the time. Whereas software is gonna do a lot better. So when we think about WMS and how do we help solve this problem, those are some of the things we're thinking about in terms of releasing orders kind of individually or in small batches versus maybe a traditional wave-based scenario. And then we start to expand that out across the supply chain, because things just get more and more complex as we start thinking about those problems from a macro level. Looking at the store network, and then even into things that get into more transportation optimization type of scenarios. So there's a lot going on here, and I think that I think the point here, to at least put a bow on it from my perspective, is rather than trying to have a human figure out the best way to do things, usually the best scenario and the way we're seeing people move is to really rely on data conditions and empirical evidence and push forward that way.
Good notes.
Yeah, I think one of the single most frustrating things, Adam, when you're talking about relying on a person, is having to undo a wave on Black Friday when you just selected the wrong orders. I don't know that I've seen so many disheartening looks as I see when that happens. So I completely agree with you there.
Yeah.
Which brings us to collaboration. Tyler, Bricks is extremely good at collaborating with customers and partners. So secret number 3, seamless integration and collaboration. Tyler, what are some challenges and pain points?
Yeah, I think harkening back to taking a look at the entire enterprise as a whole, right? And taking a look at each of these systems, from ERP, WMS, OMS to the multi-carrier and TMS systems, that's all included in here. And it's really making a decision with all of those in mind and taking a project with all of those in mind, and deciding ahead of time of, what system is going to own what decisions. Then we can build our design, we can build our integration points when we need to, we can build our test cases around those broader decisions with intentionality and not just get it installed as quickly as possible. So I know Justin and I were laughing as we were preparing for this. We've had customers who have said, hey, let's turn on ProShip in 4 weeks, right? Just connect it to the main carrier and we'll be good to go, right? And I think we would both say is it possible? Maybe we can run it together and make it happen. But what's going to provide more value is thinking strategically around, okay, I am prepared to connect this to my ERP, to my OMS. I'm going to ship from store. I'm not going to ship this brand from store because it's got special packaging or personalization. And really thinking through that whole process, right? Like, do I have a brand? Do I have a flow or a channel to where the customer expectations is higher, right? Do I have a brand where it's maybe more on the value side and it's okay to ship it SurePost or SmartPost and get it there when it gets there? So taking a step back, and that's one of the things that our team will like to do, is really drive some specific business requirements, gathering, and strategic planning of why are we doing this, and kind of asking that question of is it the best way to get it done? And then it goes all into testing and being prepared. So we'll talk about volume testing a little bit as we get into the next secret here, but we want to make sure that we plan ahead of time of, let's not just generate a label for every ship via and validate that it checks the check mark. Yep, I can ship it ground, I can ship it 2-day air. But let's think in advance of, okay, can I ship everything ground while also packing out my ASRS during a peak period, while also running away for 20,000 order lines, and while also running a heavy business report from SCI? Do we plan for that? Do we test it, and do we pull it all together? And can we do it a few times over and over again? So let's plan ahead of time, and again, let's pull in the order management team, let's pull in the ERP team, let's pull in the digital team. I know we didn't necessarily include the web storefront as part of our supply chain stack, but I think more and more, and Adam, I'm not sure if you're seeing this, more and more we're getting pulled into conversations with digital teams and e-com teams, and all of a sudden I've had to be really up to speed on what web fronts can do and PDPs and everything else, right? So I think more and more in this e-com world, we're seeing that pull together to where now you can't have supply chain be soloed from your digital team because they need to pull it together. So I think thinking that holistic view is what we want to do as a partner as we deliver solutions like this, to really think strategically and not just rush and put something in.
Yeah, there's a phrase out there that I think is slowly starting to be coined. If you don't take the time to plan it the first time, it's going to take even longer to fix it the second time, right?
There's a quote from John Wooden, who's one of my favorite basketball coaches of all time. He says, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, you definitely don't have time to do it right again.
Oh, there we go. I like that one better. I want to call out something that you said and break it down a little bit. You mentioned data and decisions, and I really, to our audience, I'd love to deconstruct that like it were food, right? Because really there is a difference between the data and decisions that belong in each of these systems of record. Again, country of manufacturing, that belongs in the ERP, right? It should be there. Where inventory belongs in the WMS. Shipping logic belongs in a multi-carrier shipping software. But then there's also the data that's the decisions that's associated with that. And I'm not going to go back through all of them and give you an example, but there are certain things that decision belongs in each of them. And when you try to push those into the wrong piece of software, you're not really using them for what their strengths are. They may be able to do it, but you're probably not going to get the best advantage out of it that you could.
Okay, before we jump into strategies for breaking down silos, this is another part I think that Tyler's good at, that he can answer very well. But Tyler, before you do, can you give us a quick highlight about what Bricks does and how they partner with Manhattan and ProShip?
Yeah, I mean, we are supply chain solution delivery partners. So we want to work with customers, retailers, distributors, 3PLs, to enable the technology that you see here from people like Manhattan Associates and ProShip. So having that partner on your side that has done hundreds and hundreds of these projects, understands the challenges that you might incur, but has that technical expertise to help work through them and be someone that continues to push the project forward. We love long-term partnerships and are thankful for a lot of customers who have trusted us to continually advance it, whether it's WMS, OMS, TMS, parcel, or other solutions there. So that's really what we're focused on, and a part of that is breaking down silos. And as we've grown our team over the years, it's been really a big focus of us to go beyond just WMS, so that we can have OMS and TMS and parcel subject matter experts to build teams for customers that can break down those silos and have conversations with the digital team and with the transportation team and with the warehousing team, and pull it all together, which goes back to not only having great technology from Manhattan and ProShip that's able to break down these silos and able to unify with each other, but also having team members who are willing to have the conversations and maybe step outside of their comfort zone or their area of pure expertise, and be a little more flexible that way. So that's how we're helping break down those silos.
Thank you very much. And we're going to move on to secret number 4, continuous improvement and scalability. Obviously, we must meet growing business needs, and usually that is in a volatile environment. Justin, can you elaborate on maybe something that can assist with that?
Excellent. Yeah, we've teased this for a little while. We're going to talk about compression testing. Compression testing is pretty straightforward. Somewhere, and if you're a major retailer right now, probably July or August is a great time to do compression testing. But you can also do it at other times of the year. Mother's Day is probably one of the second largest shipping season of the year for many of our customers. You can try it then. But the idea behind compression testing is we can completely test the entire process. We can start by bringing in a couple of temp workers. If we normally bring in temp workers for peak, we can go through our training process. We can do all this. At this time, by the way, we're not shipping anything. Okay, we're training our people. We're making sure they're ready to go. We're giving them advice. We are ensuring that they understand their chain of command, all these other things. Meanwhile, those orders are stacking up, right? And maybe during peak, we want to be able to process 1,000 orders an hour, 2,000 orders an hour, whatever that case may be. So we build up. It hits 11 o'clock. We've done all of our training. Everybody knows that from 11 until 3, we are going to ship that X number of orders per hour, get them all into the trailer. It still leaves us a couple hours to catch up in the event that something goes horribly wrong, right? So we're doing this intelligently, but then we hit go, we release all those orders, things start moving, the picking starts going to the RF guns, all these other things. We start to see our conveyors going, tilt sorters are doing things. It's all a madhouse like we expect it to be during peak, okay? And the most important people in this are the people with the notebooks, the people going, okay, this is working really well. This needs fixing, right? This I'm going to have to go back to my vendors and solve this problem, that problem. And then at the end of the day, after all of this is done, you get all the people with the notebooks back in place. You figure out what worked, what didn't, what needs to change. And if you need, like I said, you make those calls to your vendors to get those tweaks in before you actually hit peak. Compression testing can be done at any point in time out of peak. But of course, the closer it is to peak with enough buffer for your vendors to make changes, right, the better off it is.
Yeah, one aspect of continuous improvement I'll add here really quickly is 2 things I think about when it comes to peak is like, how do we evaluate new carriers, right? So rather than just go and find the cheapest one or the one who's available in the next 4 months for peak this year, do it strategically, right? Is this someone we want to utilize coming from stores? We've worked with some companies who have done like very local, dense urban carriers, like people that I had never heard of before, right? So we've enabled some of those for dense urban areas or Southeast or Southwest or whatever it might be. So strategically evaluate how you diversify and reduce risk around carriers. And that can be for peak 2024, but that could also be having conversations to think about what do we want to do in 2025 to improve already as well. And the other piece that I think about with improvement here is think about how you want to flow your inventory and your orders between stores and DC. So Adam talked about, the business rules and the business logic inside of the OMS is, again, how do we get more strategic than just, okay, I'm going to send 5 orders to every store, and then when they're done for the day, they're done for the day, versus I'm going to send every order to the DC because they they can ship it the most cost effective from a labor standpoint. But to think and really plan that inventory flow and be predictive in that is another thing we're talking with a lot of customers about. Is, again, we've got the data, we've got the connected systems. Let's be more strategic, and let's be more strategic in our decision making and how we do things, rather than just push it through as much as possible.
Adam, you mentioned earlier in an earlier conversation about how the world has changed, and that we have to do ongoing monitoring, continuous optimization based on that individual customer's needs and requirements.
Yeah, Jerry. So look, if there's one thing that's constant, it's change, right? No, there's no doubt about it. And we've seen the pace of change just accelerate, especially over the past 5 or so years. With technologies moving 100 miles an hour, and our customers are really needing to keep up. So where enterprise software has started to morph is moving from this concept of annual releases. I mean, you think about WMS and other supply chain software solutions over the years. You're used to hearing about annual release cycles, and really most of our customers in the past, and this is true for most enterprise software solutions out there, you were on a 5-year upgrade cycle, right? So even though the vendor was delivering new updates every year, well, you didn't get access to them until you upgraded, and an upgrade is a big costly thing, and frankly nobody has time for it. So and they certainly don't want to fund it. So now we've moved from these annual releases with these 5-year upgrade cycles down to quarterly releases with no upgrades. And even beyond that, I mean, it's not even quarterly functional releases, but you're talking about bi-weekly delivery of defects and so forth. So, think about that change. I get no code delivery from my vendor for 5 years, because that's the upgrade cycle I'm on, down to getting code every 2 weeks. I mean, that is a major upgrade to misuse that term for a moment. We're seeing just the ability to use that vehicle to keep up with industry regulations, to keep up with carrier requirements and so forth. Because look, at the end of the day, I think that ProShip's no stranger to those biweekly releases either. So it just allows us to keep our customers in a good place and keep them up to date with the latest and greatest at all times.
That includes the multi-carrier shipping software too, right, Justin?
Yeah, actually, we do have one file that we update every 4 hours, which is predictive weather from NOAA for our food and pharmaceutical customers. So, yeah, it has been quite a difference in the last decade, where even we used to release patches beyond a month and things of that nature. Now all the way down to as little as every 4 hours, with the regular releases for us every other Wednesday. But yeah.
Well, let's move on to building a winning ESS. Some questions too.
Yeah, I can start with this. I think you guys have probably heard me say a lot now of go ask the question, right? Start asking the whys and the whats and the hows. And so I think as we think about it, it's twofold. It's one, ask the question, what do we need to do now, starting on June 27th, to be ready for peak and to be more successful? So again, I don't know that the answer for everyone is going to be call Justin and implement ProShip immediately or add a new carrier. I don't know that we can do that at the moment, but there are things you can do now to start saying, what are we going to plan to do for our ship from store for the peak season? And so I would say the first question to ask is, what can we accomplish in the next 3 to 4 months to get ready for peak this year? And then what should be part of our innovative roadmap for 2025 and beyond? So start thinking and dreaming. That's one of the fun things I get to do in my current role, is have conversations with customers and kind of dream about the what ifs and the what could you do's and what if you had Manhattan Active WM and Active Omni connected together. Like, think of what we could do there, right? And so I think both short term and long term, that's the question to start asking, is how do I turn this into not just a cost center, but an innovation driver for my company? And then how do I build the business case to make it sense to the leadership team? I think that's really where to start on how you can start asking those questions to build that winning ESS. And it really comes back to supply chain is not a cost center anymore. I think for a long time, and 10 plus years ago, it was just how do we do it as cheaply as possible, right? It's not that anymore. It's an innovation center. We've worked with customers who have supply chain innovation budgets now to go, let's go try things. Let's go turn on AI. Let's go turn on some ML. Let's go pilot robotics and various other things. And so now to build a winning enterprise supply chain software stack, you've got to make that decision and get buy-in to turn it into an innovation center and not just a cost center in your company.
Daniel Stanton, the author of Supply Chain Management for Dummies, once said, supply chains are like living organisms. They're dynamic, complex, and constantly evolving. Our role is to monitor, adapt, and optimize them continuously, just like Adam had mentioned earlier. So we want to move on to some final advice. Adam, if you could offer your final advice for our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and thank you for having us. I think this has been a great conversation. But look, if I had to say one thing, it is that change is inevitable. If we've learned one thing over the past 4 years, that pace of change has accelerated so much. And so, investing in strategies that are flexible and allowing to keep up with all that pace of change, I'd say that's mission critical. So, maybe to leave with one little parting nugget of wisdom: life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Justin?
It's June 27th. There is just over 3 months before traditional peak. Even for our enterprise customers, there is time to make a couple of strategic changes. But if you're going to do it, I'm going to go back to what Tyler was talking about. We need to get talking very quickly, whether we're talking about any of the parts of enterprise software stack, not just multi-carrier shipping. Now's the time to talk about it. Now's the time to get on the phone for anything you need to have done this year. So don't hesitate. Start talking now. Get that appointment for after the 4th of July, and let's get moving.
Tyler?
Yeah, I'll end with one more quote from this one from Thomas Edison, and it's there's a way to do it better, find it. And it just really speaks to me for continuous improvement of, like, we can't sit still. We may be doing great, right? We may be the leader and beating all of our competitors, but I can promise you, with new technology, with new feature functionality coming out from these enterprise software vendors, with new changes to the way the world works, there's a way that you can do it better, whatever it is: distribution, supply chain, fulfillment, planning, replenishment, whatever it might be. There's a way to do it better. Go find it and go find what it is. So like Justin was saying, I'm sure all three of us would love to have conversations on how things can be better, whether it's a little small thing or a big, enormous change. And so that's what I would encourage the audience to do is go find it.
Outstanding. Thank you, all three of you. Now for our audience, if you would like to submit a question, if you look to the right, there's an area for you to do so. If you have an issue, there should be a little icon at the top to help you out. We did have a LinkedIn poll earlier, and one of the questions that we received was from Josie Denser. And the question is, what current dangerous goods functionality do you have in the system, i.e., can you flag SKUs? What kind of logic can you build in? For example, one SKU might be regulated as a limited quantity by ground, whereas the same product, when shipped by air, requires an entirely different set of shipping parameters. So what?
I'm going to take the first whack at this, and then I'm going to toss it over to Adam. This is very simple. That's a categorical yes. Not only can we pass down, and not only can we be passed things such as the class of hazmat it is, we can pass down things like it can only be shipped 49 CFR, i.e. ground. So we never let it, the shipping software never lets it go on a plane without manager approval, things of that nature. The reality is dangerous goods shipment execution has been perfected over the last 2 decades. And with a great unification, the data gets passed to the shipping software to ensure that we minimize the chances for the warehouse to make errors upon execution. Adam, you want to add to that?
Yeah, for sure. So, with Manhattan, so this is an interesting question. We have the ability to store all the hazmat data, and we can build rules on all of it as well. I will say this though, and I'm gonna apologize in advance for all the movie quotes, but I'm gonna come at you with another one. So, with great power comes great responsibility when it comes to dangerous goods and injecting those into rules. So in the old world, like, we actually did not allow you to cube dangerous goods and hazmat items within our software because of liability, et cetera, et cetera. With Manhattan Active, we kind of open up the keys to the kingdom a little bit, and you have rules, you can define rules, you can build cubing rules however you want to. You can cube some dangerous goods if you want to. Don't tell my legal team I said that, but that is true. We can do it. So there's, but because of the power that you have with that, you have to be careful with it, right? You have to be careful not to mismanage it, and you don't want to put categories of things together in the same box, and you got to manage it. So there's software, and there's the operations and the procedures, and those things have to really go together, to do this appropriately. And then we really rely on partners like ProShip and others to help manage some of the and Bricks as well, like to help manage and drive some guidelines and so forth. And then when it comes to like hazmat documentation and that sort of stuff, I mean, we pass the data through, and we let the experts handle the the documentation and the labels.
Adam, hold on one second. I just want to throw this in there. You bring up a good point, is that people can put things together wrong. There are, in the shipping software, there are options to actually send out to a validation service. Talk about unified data, right? The fact that you can pass this down, and you can have an asset in a base with the wrong overpack, and we can reject that shipment until somebody packs it right. So there are a lot of different things. One, I agree with you. Please have good business rules in place before you pass it down to the shipping software. Okay. But even in the shipping software, we can add just one more safety net for you, so you're not just relying upon the human knowledge. Though I do recommend that you have your dangerous goods shippers trained. Tyler, sorry I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to add this. It's funny. This was a good question. I don't know the person who asked it personally, but we had this exact situation happen with a joint customer of all three of ours last peak. I remember we were getting prepared to where one of the test cases we went back was something that should not have been able to be shipped 2-day air, a chemical of some kind. We intentionally were trying to force it to go 2-day air and force it to places like Hawaii and things like that, to validate that ProShip would not allow it to, would reject that as the ship via, and that, it logs an error. Obviously it doesn't get routed, doesn't get a ship via WM, and that causes a whole nother freak out on various people's parts. But the software is doing what it's supposed to do, right? So I can in fact validate what these guys are saying, that it does handle that situation very well.
One more question from internal, I think. Dave Salter. We didn't discuss TMS a whole lot as a part of the enterprise software stack. That's important too, right?
Yeah, I think.
So maybe I'll give a quick note here. So one of the things that we say about, so TMS is part of our supply chain, kind of application. So when I talk WMS, I don't really differentiate between WMS and TMS much anymore. It's all one application, single stack, unified, right? Thank you, Tyler, is my favorite word. But the capabilities are based on your subscription level. Do you subscribe to enough of the software that you can do all the optimization and consolidation and all that kind of stuff, or not? But but clearly, TMS is a big part of this whole conversation as well. And I think because we were talking, kind of small parcel, usually TMS is for the bigger movements, LTL, TL, and rail, and so forth. So definitely, part of the conversation, no doubt about it. But I think as we're, kind of zeroing in on the small parcel stuff, we were kind of focused in on that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure. I've learned a lot. I hope our audience learned a lot. If anybody has any follow-up questions that they did not submit or could not submit, please email us and let us know. You can go to our website at proshipinc.com, and there is a form to fill out if you'd like for us to contact you. Thank you so much. Hope to see you again, and have a great week.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.